Forget your credit card, forget cash. Let's travel back in time to the heart of the ancient world, to the sun-baked metropolis of Babylon. The air here is thick with the smell of roasting grain, exotic spices, and the dust of 1,000 footsteps. A river of humanity flows all around you, merchants in fringed robes, laborers with calloused hands, and travelers from lands you've only heard of in stories. You're here to do some shopping, but your wallet's empty. Instead, your wealth has weight. Clutched in your hand are a few small, unassuming pieces of silver. So, in the world's first great city, what could this silver actually buy you? The answer is more surprising than you think. For the next few minutes, you're not just a tourist, you're a Babylonian. Let's call you Nabu. You've just finished a month of hard work, you've been paid, and you have a few shekels of silver burning a hole in your pocket. It's time to navigate the chaotic, vibrant, and surprisingly sophisticated marketplace. This isn't just about buying stuff, it's about surviving and thriving in a city that laid the foundations of civilization. So stick with Nabu on his shopping trip. First up, what exactly are we holding in our hand? Before we buy anything, we have to understand the money. In Babylon, money was both simple and revolutionary. The main currency wasn't a coin with a king's face on it, but silver, and often barley, measured by weight. The standard unit was the shekel, a specific weight of about 8.3 grams of silver. Think of it less like a $5 bill and more like a standardized metal chunk. 60 shekels made a mina, and 60 minas made a talent. When you bought something, the transaction was literally called to weigh. The merchant would pull out a set of scales, place your silver on one side and a standard stone weight on the other to get a fair measurement. This system was built on trust, but it was also backed by a tough legal framework. The famous Code of Hammurabi, one of the world's oldest deciphered law codes, had specific rules for commerce. For some deals, like hiring a farmhand, the law said you had to pay in grain. For others, like paying a doctor or an artisan, you had to use silver. Messing it up could land you in serious trouble. But for most folks, the economy was a fluid mix of silver and barter. You might trade extra wool or dates for something you needed. Temples even acted as the first banks, holding valuables and giving out loans. It was a complex system, a far cry from the primitive grunting and pointing we might imagine. So with our silver shekels ready, let's hit the market. First priority, food. The heart of any city is its stomach, and Babylon was no different. The food market would have been an overwhelming assault on the senses. You'd see piles of glistening dates, a staple of the Babylonian diet, stacked high. The air would be filled with the rich, yeasty smell of fresh barley bread, the cornerstone of Mesopotamian life. Let's start with the basics. A month of hard labor might earn you about 1 shekel of silver. So what can that get you? Astronomical diaries from the time, which meticulously recorded commodity prices, give us a great idea. With a single shekel of silver, you could buy a lot of barley, sometimes up to 180 liters. This was your main source of calories. It could be ground into flour for bread, or just as importantly, fermented into beer. In Babylon, beer wasn't a luxury. It was a daily drink for everyone, from the lowest laborer to the king himself. It was thick, nutritious, and often safer to drink than water from the canals. You wouldn't buy it in a bottle. You'd get a jug filled at a tavern or a brewer's stall. What else is on the menu? Dates were another cheap, high-energy food. Onions, garlic, chickpeas, and lentils added flavor and nutrients. For protein, you'd find fish from the Euphrates River, salted and dried. Your go-to cooking oil was sesame oil, another valuable commodity whose price was carefully tracked. So, what does this mean for our guy Nabu? After earning his monthly shekel, he could spend a fraction of it to get enough barley to feed his family for weeks. He might then trade a little barley for a jug of beer, a string of onions, and a handful of dried fish. For the average Babylonian, life was a constant calculation of grain and silver, all to make sure the pantry was never empty. But life isn't just about survival, right? You want to make your house a home. For that, we're heading to the artisan's quarter. Leaving the smell of bread behind, we wander into a noisier part of the market, buzzing with the sounds of hammers and saws. This is where you'd find everything to furnish your clay brick home. Pottery was everywhere. Simple clay pots, cups, and plates were essential for cooking and eating, and they were cheap. According to Hammurabi's code, A skilled artisan might earn about 5 grains of silver a day, so a simple pot would cost just a tiny fraction of a shekel. You'd also find small, shell-shaped clay lamps that burned sesame oil to light up your home after sunset. Textiles were a massive part of the Babylonian economy, especially wool. The state controlled a huge wool industry, processing wool from vast flocks of sheep to be woven into cloth for sale at home and abroad. A guy like Nabu would need woolen cloth for his clothes, a light tunic for the summer, and a heavy cloak for the cooler winters. The price of wool changed with the market, but like barley, it was a fundamental commodity. For 1 shekel, you could probably buy enough wool to keep yourself clothed for a good while. What about furniture? A typical Babylonian home didn't have much. You might find a few simple wooden stools, a low table, or reed mats for sitting and sleeping. Wood was scarce in Mesopotamia, so most furniture was a luxury that had to be imported. And that brings us to the most exciting part of the market, where the world came to Babylon. Babylon sat on a trade superhighway, the Euphrates River, making it a crossroads for goods from across the known world. This is where the empire's true wealth was on full display, picture stalls overflowing with things that had traveled thousands of miles. From Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, came metals like copper and silver. From the forests of Lebanon came fragrant cedar wood, prized for building the palaces and temples of the wealthy. From the east, traders brought carnelian beads from the Indus Valley and shiny pearls from the Persian Gulf. The famous incense route delivered frankincense and myrrh from southern Arabia, scents that filled temples and the homes of the elite. Our friend Nabu is probably just window shopping here. These items were incredibly expensive for a normal worker. A fancy piece of gold jewelry or a decorated cedar box could cost many shekels, representing months, if not years of labor. To put it in stark perspective, a slave could be sold for around 10 to 20 shekels of silver, showing the value of a human life compared to a luxury good. Wealthy women who could own property and run businesses might browse stalls selling cosmetics like kohl for eyeliner and ochre for lipstick, all stored in delicate alabaster jars. She might also admire fine linen from Egypt, much lighter and more comfortable than the local wool. This part of the market was a testament to Babylon's power. It didn't just make its own goods, it commanded the wealth of other nations. But goods weren't the only thing for sale. You could also buy something just as valuable: people's time and skills. What if you needed a hand with a project or a legal document drawn up? In Babylon, you could hire people for almost anything, and the Code of Hammurabi often set the price. Let's say Nabu needed help on his small plot of land. He could hire a field laborer, and the law set the wage at 8 gur of corn per year. Hiring an ox and a driver also had a set price. These rules were like an early form of minimum wage, meant to keep the economy stable. A tailor's daily rate was 5 grains of silver, while a skilled builder would earn more. Even professional services had a price list. If you broke a bone, a doctor would set it for you. The cost, according to Hammurabi's code, a doctor got 5 shekels of silver for healing a free man. But the law also reflected the city's rigid social structure. The same service for a freed slave cost 3 shekels, and for a slave just 2. And if the doctor failed and the patient died, the consequences were severe. The doctor could have his hands cut off. One of the most critical services was that of the scribe. In a society built on contracts, literacy was a rare and valuable skill. If Nabu bought land, he'd hire a scribe to carve the details onto a wet clay tablet. Once dried, this tablet became a legally binding contract. The cost for a scribe's work wasn't standardized like a laborer's wage, but their expertise was essential for any major transaction. This ability to buy not just things, but time, labor, and knowledge shows just how sophisticated their economy was. But there was one market in Babylon unlike any other, a place both fascinating and deeply unsettling to us today. Centuries after Babylon's peak, the Greek historian Herodotus described a custom he found so strange he called it the most ingenious he'd ever seen: the marriage market. According to Herodotus, once a year, all the young marriageable women in a village were gathered in one place while men formed a circle around them. An auctioneer would then present each woman, starting with the most beautiful. Wealthy men would bid against each other, paying a high price in silver for the woman they found most attractive. But here's the twist Herodotus called ingenious. The money from selling the beautiful women wasn't kept by the auctioneer. Instead, it was used to create dowries for the women who were considered less attractive or who had disabilities. The auctioneer would then offer these women, asking which man would marry her for the smallest amount of dowry money. In this way, the high prices for some women funded the marriages of others, ensuring every woman found a husband and the security that came with it. It's crucial to see this through a historical lens. Marriage back then was often a practical, economic arrangement, not a romantic one. As bizarre and objectifying as it sounds to us, this system was viewed as a way to create social and economic stability. Whether this was a widespread practice or just an exaggerated story is still debated by historians, but it gives us a powerful glimpse into the very different values of the ancient world. Alright, our shopping trip with Nabu is done. As he walks home with his barley, a new clay pot, and maybe a small piece of dyed wool, we can see the full picture of Babylon's economy. It was a world of incredible contrasts, a place where a shekel of silver could buy a month's worth of food, but where you could also gaze at priceless treasures from 1,000 miles away. A society run by some of history's most detailed legal codes, which set the price for everything from a doctor's fee to a laborer's wage. Babylon wasn't just a city of mud bricks, it was a humming economic engine, with banking, credit, legal contracts, and global trade. What you could buy depended completely on who you were: a laborer living on barley and beer, a merchant trading in luxury imports, or a noble furnishing a grand estate. Walking through its markets shows us that our fundamental needs for food, shelter, and security are timeless. The ways we meet those needs, however, have changed in ways the Babylonians could never have imagined. So the next time you tap your card to pay, think of Nabu and his handful of silver, the clatter of the merchant's scales, and the revolutionary markets of the world's first great city. What part of the Babylonian market surprised you the most? Was it the price-controlled wages in Hammurabi's code, or the wild marriage market Herodotus described? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this trip back in time, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the economics of the ancient world. Thanks for watching.